Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and looked at the strange signal coming from deep space. He had been exploring the galaxy for 20 years but had never seen anything like this before. The signal was old, very old, and it seemed to be calling to them from a place that should not exist anymore. His crew worked quietly around him, checking their instruments and trying to understand what they had found. Lisa Hamilton ran her fingers over the ancient symbols carved into the metal plate they had discovered. She was the best language expert in human space, and she had spent months trying to read these alien words. The plate came from a crashed ship on a dead world at the edge of known space. Most of the ship was destroyed, but this one piece survived, and it held secrets that made her hands shake as she worked. The symbols told a story that changed everything humans believed about their past. Earth was not destroyed by a natural disaster as everyone thought. It was attacked and conquered by alien races who called themselves the Dominion. The symbols described how human cities burned, how millions of people died, and how the survivors were taken away as slaves to work on distant worlds. Ben Rogers read the translation report 3 times before he could believe it. He was Jake's second in command, and he had seen many terrible things during his years in space. But this was different. This meant that somewhere in the galaxy, humans might still be suffering as slaves. It also meant that the aliens who did this thought all humans were dead. They had no idea that colony ships escaped the attack and built new worlds among the stars. The report traveled fast through human space networks. On every world and every space station, people gathered to hear the news. Children who had learned about Earth only from old stories now knew that their homeworld might still exist. Adults who had built new lives on distant planets remembered the ancient songs about blue skies and green forests. Kate Sullivan received the message while she was reviewing fleet reports in her office on New Terra Prime. She was the highest-ranking military officer in human space, and she had fought in wars against pirates and hostile aliens. But as she read about what happened to Earth, she felt a cold anger that was different from anything she had experienced before. Her blue eyes became hard as ice, and her hands gripped the report so tightly that the paper cracked. The discovery changed everything about human plans for the future. For 3,500 years, humans had been peaceful explorers who built new homes and made friends with alien races. They had advanced technology, powerful ships, and colonies on hundreds of worlds, but they had never used their strength for revenge. Now that was about to change. Jake called a meeting with his senior officers to discuss what they should do next. The bridge of his ship became a war room, as charts and star maps filled the screens around them. The signal had given them something precious beyond measure. It had given them the exact location of Earth and the alien empire that controlled it. Marcus Stone was building ships on the industrial world of New Pittsburgh when he received orders to change all production to military vessels. He was the best engineer in human space, and his factories had built the peaceful exploration ships that carried humans to new worlds. Now those same factories would build weapons of war. The irony was not lost on him that Earth's children would return home in ships designed for battle. The Dominion had ruled a large part of the galaxy for thousands of years. They were a group of different alien races who worked together to conquer and control other worlds. They used advanced technology and massive armies to crush anyone who opposed them, but they had one weakness that they did not know about. They believed humans were extinct, wiped out so completely that none survived anywhere in the galaxy. Amy Carter worked day and night in her laboratory to prepare new weapons for the coming war. She was a scientist who had spent her life creating peaceful tools to help humans explore space. Now she used that same knowledge to build devices that could destroy Dominion ships and break through their defenses. Every equation she solved and every test she completed brought humanity one step closer to reclaiming their birth world. The news spread to every human colony, and volunteers came forward in numbers that surprised even the military leaders. Young people who had never seen combat wanted to fight for a world they had never visited. Old veterans who thought their fighting days were over asked to return to service. The call for justice awakened, something deep in the human spirit that had been sleeping for 35 centuries. Ryan Parker stood before a massive holographic display that showed the route from human space to Earth. He was the fleet commander chosen to lead the largest military force humans had ever assembled. The journey would take them through hostile territory controlled by aliens who had committed genocide against their people. It would be dangerous and many would not survive, but there was no other choice. The preparations took 2 years, but finally the day came when the first ships were ready to depart. Families gathered at spaceports to say goodbye to their loved ones. Some would return as heroes, others would not return at all, but everyone understood that this was necessary. Earth was calling her children home, and they would answer that call no matter what the cost. As the fleet prepared to enter hyperspace and begin their long journey toward Earth, Jake Morrison thought about the signal that had started everything. An ancient alien beacon had revealed the truth about humanity's past and given them a chance to write a new future. The children of Earth were coming home, and they were coming for revenge. Marcus Stone watched as the largest shipyard in human space worked around the clock to build the fleet that would reclaim Earth. The orbital factories above New Pittsburgh had never built warships before, but his engineers were quick learners. They took the peaceful exploration vessels they knew how to make and turned them into instruments of war. The sounds of construction filled the void of space as thousands of workers welded armor plating and installed weapon systems. The flagship of the new fleet was a massive battleship called Earth's Fury. It was 3 times larger than any ship humans had built before, with enough firepower to destroy entire alien fleets. Marcus himself oversaw every detail of its construction, making sure that nothing was left to chance. This ship would carry their hopes and dreams across the galaxy to their ancient home. Amy Carter barely slept during those 2 years of preparation. Her laboratory became a fortress of scientific research, where she and her team worked to create weapons that could penetrate Dominion defenses. They had captured alien technology from border conflicts over the years, and now they reverse-engineered everything they could. The quantum disruptor was her greatest achievement, a device that could tear apart enemy shields like they were made of paper. The testing of new weapons took place in secret locations far from civilian populations. Each successful test brought cheers from the scientists and engineers who watched their creations destroy target ships in brilliant flashes of light. But Amy never forgot that these weapons would soon be used against living beings who had enslaved and murdered her people. The weight of that responsibility never left her shoulders. Ryan Parker assembled his fleet, commanders in the war room aboard Earth's Fury. The holographic display showed their planned route through Dominion space, a path that would take them through dozens of star systems controlled by their enemies. Each system represented a potential battle, and each battle would cost them ships and lives. But there was no safe route to Earth, no way to avoid the fight that was coming. The fleet contained over 500 ships of various sizes and purposes. Battleships and cruisers would engage enemy fleets in direct combat. Destroyers and frigates would hunt down smaller targets and protect the larger vessels. Transport ships carried the Marines and soldiers who would fight on the ground when they reached Earth. Support vessels carried supplies, medical equipment, and everything else needed for a campaign that might last for years. Nina Brooks trained her Special Forces soldiers in combat techniques designed specifically for fighting Dominion troops. The Ghost Battalion was the elite unit that would lead the assault on Earth itself. They studied every piece of intelligence about enemy tactics and equipment. They practiced boarding actions on mock-up alien ships. They learned to fight in the poisoned atmosphere that Earth had become after centuries of alien occupation. Each soldier in the Ghost Battalion volunteered for a mission they knew would probably kill them. But they also knew they would be the first humans to set foot on their ancestral world in over 3,000 years. That honor was worth any sacrifice. Nina pushed them hard during training because she knew that when the time came, their skills would mean the difference between victory and defeat. Chris Taylor worked the diplomatic channels to find allies among the alien races who had suffered under Dominion rule. Not all aliens supported the empire that controlled so much of the galaxy. Some had been conquered just like humans, their worlds stripped of resources and their people enslaved. Others had managed to stay independent, but lived in constant fear of Dominion expansion. The Carillion refugees were the first to join the human cause. Their home world had been destroyed by Dominion weapons, and the survivors lived on scattered colonies throughout the galaxy. They had been waiting for someone strong enough to challenge the Empire, and humanity's return gave them hope for revenge. Their ships were fast, and their crews were experienced fighters who knew Dominion tactics well. The Vorthan colonies also agreed to provide support, though they could not send large fleets. Their contribution came in the form of intelligence about Dominion military bases and supply routes. This information was invaluable for planning attacks and avoiding the heaviest enemy concentrations. Every piece of data they provided saved human lives and brought the fleet closer to success. Even some Zephyrian factions turned against the Dominion when they learned about humanity's return. The Zephyrians had been part of the original attack on Earth, but many of their younger generation felt shame about their ancestors' actions. They secretly provided technical information about Dominion ship designs and weapon systems. This betrayal from within would prove crucial when the fighting began. The final preparations took place in a hidden system on the edge of human space. The entire fleet gathered there for final inspections and last-minute adjustments. Supply ships distributed ammunition and spare parts to every vessel. Medical ships stocked up on supplies for treating battle wounds. Communication systems were tested and retested to ensure perfect coordination during combat. Jake Morrison walked through the corridors of his ship and felt the tension in the air. Every crew member knew they were about to embark on the most dangerous mission in human history. Some would become heroes whose names would be remembered forever. Others would die in the cold vacuum of space, far from the homes they were fighting to protect. But all of them understood that this was bigger than their individual lives. The intelligence reports painted a grim picture of what they would face. The Dominion had spent centuries fortifying their empire, building massive defense networks around their most important worlds. Earth itself was protected by orbital platforms that could destroy entire fleets. The enemy had millions of soldiers and thousands of warships ready to defend their conquests. But humans had advantages that the Dominion did not expect. Their technology had advanced far beyond what existed when Earth was conquered. Their ships were faster and more powerful than anything the enemy had seen. Most importantly, they were fighting for something the aliens could never understand: the desire to reclaim their birth world and honor their ancestors. As the fleet prepared to enter hyperspace and begin their journey toward Earth, every human ship broadcast the same message on all frequencies. It was a declaration of war, a promise of justice, and a warning to anyone who stood in their way. The children of Earth were coming home, and they would not be denied their heritage any longer. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Dominion territory like a storm, bringing destruction to everything in its path. The first alien patrol ships to encounter them sent frantic messages back to their commanders, describing vessels unlike anything they had seen before. These ships moved with deadly grace and struck with precision that turned their formations into clouds of burning debris within minutes. Tony Mitchell commanded the Destroyer Vindication as it led the first wave of attacks against Dominion border defenses. His ship danced between enemy fire while its weapons tore through alien hulls like they were made of thin metal. The quantum torpedoes that Amy Carter had designed proved even more effective than hoped, punching through shields and armor to destroy targets from the inside out. The aliens fought back with everything they had, but their weapons seemed weak against human defenses. Energy beams that could vaporize their own ships barely scratched human armor. Missiles that carried enough explosives to level cities bounced harmlessly off deflector shields. The technological advantage that humanity had gained during their exile was overwhelming. Each victory brought the fleet closer to Earth, but it also revealed the true horror of what the Dominion had done to human survivors. On the mining world of Caro 7, Lauren Davis led her Marines through facilities where human slaves had been worked to death extracting rare minerals. The bodies were still there, preserved in the cold storage areas where they had been dumped when they could no longer work. The discovery of human remains on every conquered world filled the fleet with a cold fury that made them even more dangerous in battle. These were not just enemies to be defeated. They were monsters who had tortured and murdered their people for thousands of years. Every alien ship destroyed was a small payment on the debt of blood that the Dominion owed. Intelligence reports from captured enemy computers painted a picture of systematic genocide that had continued long after Earth's conquest. Humans had been used as laboratory subjects for medical experiments, forced to fight in gladiatorial games for alien entertainment, and bred like animals to produce workers for dangerous industrial projects. The scale of suffering was almost too large to comprehend. Pete Johnson led the intelligence teams that analyzed every piece of captured data. His computers worked constantly to map Dominion military positions and identify key targets for the advancing fleet. Each database they cracked revealed more about enemy capabilities and gave them crucial advantages in planning future attacks. Knowledge was as powerful as any weapon in this war. The Dominion leadership finally understood what they were facing when reports reached their capital world. High Archon Vezek had ruled the Empire for over a century, and he had never encountered a threat like this before. The humans they had conquered were primitive beings with simple technology. These new humans were something entirely different, apex predators who had evolved far beyond what anyone thought possible. Vezek ordered massive reinforcements to protect the core worlds of the Empire, pulling fleets back from frontier territories to concentrate his forces. But the humans seemed to be everywhere at once, striking without warning and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. Their ships could cross vast distances in days rather than the weeks it took Dominion vessels to move between star systems. The human strategy was simple, but effective. Rather than fighting massive battles against concentrated enemy forces, they used their speed advantage to strike at isolated targets throughout Dominion space. Supply convoys were destroyed before they could reach their destinations. Communication relays were blown up to disrupt enemy coordination. Industrial facilities were reduced to smoking ruins. Steve Allen piloted reconnaissance missions deep into enemy territory, gathering intelligence for future attacks. His stealth ship Shadow's Edge was invisible to Dominion sensors, allowing him to observe enemy movements without being detected. The information he gathered helped the fleet avoid traps and identify vulnerable targets for quick raids. Each successful mission brought more alien races to humanity's side. Word spread throughout the galaxy that the Dominion could be defeated, that the Empire that had seemed invincible for so long was actually vulnerable. Rebellions broke out on dozens of worlds as oppressed populations rose up against their masters, forcing the aliens to divide their attention between multiple threats. The psychological effect of these victories was as important as the military results. Dominion forces that had never known defeat suddenly found themselves losing battles they should have won easily. Morale collapsed as word spread that an entire human fleet was cutting through their territory, like a blade through soft tissue. Some alien units surrendered without fighting rather than face the fury of Earth's children. Helen Grant's science teams analyzed captured Dominion technology and made disturbing discoveries about what the aliens had done to Earth itself. The planet had been turned into a testing ground for weapons of mass destruction, its atmosphere poisoned and its surface scarred by experiments too horrible to describe. Even worse, they found evidence of something called Project Extinction, designed to eliminate every trace of human genetic material from their birth world. The race against time became desperate as the fleet pushed deeper into Dominion space toward Earth. Every day they delayed gave the aliens more time to complete their final solution to the human problem. If Project Extinction succeeded, there would be nothing left to reclaim except a dead rock floating in space where their homeworld used to be. Battle fatigue began to affect some crew members as the constant fighting took its toll. Jake Morrison walked through his ship and saw the strain in people's faces, the way they moved with the careful precision of those who had seen too much death. But he also saw determination in their eyes, the unbreakable will of humans who knew they were fighting for something greater than themselves. The final phase of the journey to Earth began when the fleet reached the outer edge of the Sol system. Here the Dominion had built their strongest defenses, massive fortress worlds and weapons platforms that could destroy entire fleets. But humanity had come too far to be stopped by static defenses. They had evolved beyond the simple creatures that once lived on a single world. They had become something that could reclaim their heritage no matter what the cost. As the human fleet prepared for the greatest battle in their history, every crew member knew they were about to write the final chapter of a story that had begun 35 centuries ago when the first colony ships fled Earth's destruction. The children were coming home, and nothing in the galaxy would stop them from reclaiming what was rightfully theirs. The massive fortress world called Bastion hung in space between the human fleet and Earth like a steel moon, bristling with enough weapons to destroy entire star systems. Kate Sullivan studied the tactical displays aboard Earth's Fury and felt the weight of impossible choices pressing down on her shoulders. A direct assault on Bastion would cost thousands of ships and hundreds of thousands of lives, but there seemed to be no other way past the alien stronghold. The fortress had been built over centuries using the resources of a dozen conquered worlds. Its surface was covered with defensive platforms that could track and destroy targets at incredible distances. Underground bunkers housed millions of Dominion troops ready to repel any landing force. The aliens had designed Bastion to be their ultimate weapon, an impregnable barrier that no enemy could pass. Ryan Parker proposed a desperate strategy during the command meeting. Half the fleet would launch a frontal assault on Bastion to draw the attention of its defenders. The other half would use stealth technology to slip past the fortress and continue toward Earth. It was a plan that guaranteed heavy casualties for the diversion force, but it might be their only chance to reach their homeworld before Project Extinction was completed. The volunteers for the diversion force stepped forward without hesitation when the call went out. These were humans who understood that some battles required ultimate sacrifice to achieve victory. Jake Morrison took command of the assault group, knowing that he was leading many of his friends to their deaths. But someone had to hold Bastion's attention while the main force continued toward Earth. Steve Allen received orders to lead the stealth squadron through the asteroid fields surrounding Bastion. His ship Shadow's Edge had been modified with the latest cloaking technology, making it invisible to most Dominion sensors. Behind him, 50 similar vessels carried humanity's most elite soldiers toward their ancestral home, while their comrades died to give them this chance. The battle for Bastion began with a massive bombardment as human battleships opened fire on the fortress defenses. The space around the alien stronghold lit up with energy beams and explosions as both sides unleashed their most powerful weapons. Jake watched his ships disappear in brilliant flashes of light, each one taking brave souls with it into the darkness between stars. Ben Rogers coordinated the assault from the bridge of his cruiser, directing waves of fighters and bombers against Bastion's defensive positions. The aliens responded with their own fighter squadrons, turning the space around the fortress into a chaotic battlefield where death came in milliseconds. Human pilots pushed their ships beyond safe limits, knowing that every second they bought might save Earth. The diversion worked better than anyone had dared hope. Dominion forces concentrated all their attention on the massive battle raging around Bastion, never noticing the stealth ships that slipped past their sensors like ghosts in the night. The sacrifice of the assault force gave the main expedition the opening they needed to reach Earth's solar system undetected. Meanwhile, Helen Grant's teams made a horrifying discovery in the captured data from a Dominion research station. Project Extinction was not just about destroying human genetic material on Earth. The aliens had been using their homeworld as a laboratory to develop weapons that could eliminate entire species from existence. Earth had become a testing ground for genocide on a galactic scale. The information revealed that the Dominion planned to use Earth as a demonstration of their ultimate weapon before deploying it against other rebellious worlds. Billions of humans still lived as slaves throughout the galaxy, and their lives depended on stopping Project Extinction before it could be completed. The stakes had grown beyond just reclaiming Earth to saving every human being still alive. Tony Mitchell led a desperate raid on a Dominion supply convoy to capture more intelligence about enemy plans. His ship struck like lightning in the darkness, overwhelming the escort vessels before they could send warning signals. The captured computers contained detailed specifications for the extinction weapon and its deployment schedule. The weapon was designed to rewrite the genetic code of every living thing on a planet, turning their own biology against them. It would leave the world intact for future colonization, while eliminating the original inhabitants in the most horrible way possible. The Dominion had tested smaller versions on uninhabited worlds, reducing entire ecosystems to sterile wastelands in a matter of hours. Amy Carter worked frantically to develop countermeasures against the extinction weapon while the fleet raced toward Earth. Her scientists had never encountered anything like this technology before, but they understood enough about genetic manipulation to know how devastating it could be. Every hour that passed brought them closer to a deadline that might mean the end of their species. The stealth fleet reached the outer edge of Earth's solar system and began their final approach to humanity's birth world. What they found was almost too horrible to believe. Earth's once blue oceans had turned a sickly green color from alien pollutants. The continents were covered with massive industrial complexes that belched toxic smoke into the atmosphere. Their homeworld was dying, poisoned by centuries of alien occupation. Laura Morris piloted her fighter squadron through the debris field that had once been Earth's moon. The aliens had strip-mined it for rare materials, reducing the celestial body that had watched over humanity for millions of years to a collection of floating rocks. The sight filled her with a rage that burned hotter than the stars themselves. Nina Brooks prepared her Ghost Battalion for the assault on Earth's surface. Intelligence reports showed that millions of Dominion troops were stationed on the planet, along with automated defense systems and orbital weapons platforms. The odds against success were overwhelming, but the elite soldiers had trained their entire lives for this moment. They would be the first humans to touch their ancestral soil in over 3,000 years. The final preparations took place in the shadow of Jupiter, where the stealth fleet gathered for the assault on Earth. Every ship checked its weapons and systems one last time. Every soldier said prayers or made peace with whatever gods they followed. They all knew that many would not survive the next few hours, but they also knew that their sacrifice would determine the fate of their entire species. High Archon Vezak stood in his command center on Earth's surface and watched the reports of the battle at Bastion. He believed the human fleet was destroying itself against his fortress, never suspecting that the real threat was already in his home system. His confidence in Dominion superiority blinded him to the possibility that mere humans could penetrate his defenses. The countdown to Project Extinction continued as alien scientists made final preparations for their ultimate weapon. In just a few hours, they would activate the genetic virus that would eliminate every trace of human DNA from Earth's biosphere. After that, the galaxy would see what happened to races that dared to challenge the Dominion's authority. As the human fleet prepared for the final assault on their home world, every crew member understood that they were about to write the last chapter of either humanity's greatest victory or its final defeat. Earth hung before them like a sick and dying patient, waiting for her children to either heal her wounds or join her in death. The next few hours would determine which ending their story would have. The assault on Earth began as the first light of dawn touched the poisoned atmosphere above what had once been the Pacific Ocean. Human dropships fell through the toxic clouds like burning meteors, their heat shields glowing red as they descended toward the surface of their ancestral home. Nina Brooks and her Ghost Battalion were in the lead ship, ready to be the first humans to set foot on Earth in over 3,000 years. The Dominion garrison was caught completely off guard by the sudden appearance of human forces in their most secure system. Alien commanders who had been preparing for the final phase of Project Extinction found themselves fighting for their lives as quantum torpedoes rained down from the sky. Their defensive systems, designed to repel attacks from space, were useless against enemies who had already penetrated their inner perimeter. High Archon Vezak screamed orders from his fortress palace built on the ruins of what geological surveys suggested had been New York City. The massive structure rose from the poisoned earth like a monument to alien conquest, its black walls carved with symbols celebrating the extinction of humanity. But now those same walls shook as human weapons struck the building's foundations. Laura Morris led her fighter squadron through the twisted canyons of metal and stone that had once been human cities. Her targeting systems locked onto Dominion command centers and weapons platforms, each missile strike bringing them closer to liberating their birth world. The alien aircraft that rose to meet her were fast and well armed, but they had never faced pilots who were fighting to reclaim their home. The ground battle raged across continents as human forces established beachheads in North America, Europe, and Asia. Marcus Stone's assault, troops pushed inland from their landing zones while engineers rushed to shut down the alien terraforming equipment before it could complete Earth's transformation into something unrecognizable. Every hour they delayed gave the planet's ecosystem a better chance of survival. Amy Carter's quantum disruptors proved devastatingly effective against Dominion defensive positions. The weapons she had designed in her laboratory tore through alien shields like they were made of paper, exposing the troops behind them to the fury of human soldiers who had waited 35 centuries for this moment. Each enemy position that fell brought them closer to stopping Project Extinction. The battle for the main research facility took 3 days of brutal fighting through corridors filled with alien machinery designed to destroy human genetic material. Pete Johnson led the intelligence teams that raced to capture the computers containing the extinction weapons control codes. They had to stop the final activation sequence before it released its deadly payload into Earth's atmosphere. Tony Mitchell's fleet engaged Dominion reinforcements in orbit while the ground forces fought for control of the planet's surface. His ships danced between the massive orbital platforms that guarded Earth, using their superior speed and maneuverability to avoid the heavy weapons that could vaporize them in seconds. Each platform destroyed weakened the alien grip on humanity's homeworld. The Ghost Battalion fought their way through the underground tunnels beneath Vezak's fortress, hunting for the alien commander who had overseen the torture and murder of billions of humans. Nina Brooks personally led the assault on his command center, her soldiers moving like shadows through corridors designed to confuse and trap intruders. They had trained for this mission their entire lives. Steve Allen coordinated the rescue operations that freed human slaves from the labor camps scattered across Earth's surface. These were the descendants of people who had survived the original conquest, kept alive for centuries to serve their alien masters. Many could barely speak human languages after generations of oppression, but tears ran down their faces when they saw the flags and symbols of the worlds their ancestors had dreamed of reaching. The final confrontation between humanity and the Dominion took place in the depths of Vezak's fortress as human soldiers fought their way to the alien commander's inner sanctum. The High Archon had ruled this part of the galaxy for over a century, crushing anyone who dared to oppose him. But now he faced enemies who could not be intimidated or broken, humans who had returned to reclaim what was theirs by right. Ryan Parker himself led the boarding action against Vezak's personal command ship when the alien tried to escape Earth's surface. The Admiral had commanded fleets across the galaxy, but this was personal. He wanted to look into the eyes of the creature who had ordered the genocide of his people and make sure justice was finally served after 35 centuries of waiting. The moment came when human soldiers surrounded Vezak and his command center, their weapons trained on the alien who had caused so much suffering. The High Archon could not believe what he was seeing. The humans were supposed to be extinct, wiped out so completely that none survived anywhere in the galaxy. How could these primitive creatures have become so powerful and dangerous? Amy Carter's team successfully shut down Project Extinction just hours before it would have activated, saving not only the remaining humans on Earth but also preventing the weapon from being used against other worlds throughout the galaxy. The genetic virus that would have eliminated their species was neutralized, its deadly code rewritten to harmlessly dissolve in Earth's atmosphere. The liberation of Earth took 6 months of fighting, but eventually the last Dominion stronghold fell to human forces. The aliens who had conquered and tortured their people for thousands of years were either dead, captured, or fleeing toward the edge of the galaxy. Earth belonged to humanity once again, though it would take generations to heal the wounds inflicted by centuries of alien occupation. Jake Morrison stood in the ruins of what surveys indicated had been Washington and watched the first human children, born on Earth in over 3 millennia, take their first breaths of slowly healing air. The work of restoration would be enormous, but already green shoots were emerging from soil, cleansed of alien toxins. Life was returning to their birth world. The news of Earth's liberation spread throughout the galaxy faster than the ships that carried it. Oppressed races on 100 worlds rose up against their Dominion masters, knowing that if humans could reclaim their home, then other species could do the same. The empire that had seemed invincible for so long crumbled as its subjects remembered what freedom meant. Helen Grant's archaeological teams worked tirelessly to recover what remained of human history from the ruins of their ancient cities. Museums and libraries had been destroyed, but enough fragments survived to piece together the story of what Earth had been like before the conquest. Future generations would know about their heritage and remember the price that was paid to preserve it. The war crimes trials began as soon as order was restored to Earth's major population centers. Alien commanders who had overseen the enslavement and murder of humans faced justice for their actions. The trials were broadcast throughout the galaxy, showing every species what happened to those who committed genocide against innocent populations. Earth's recovery became a symbol of hope for oppressed peoples everywhere. The blue skies and green forests that had existed only in ancient songs began to return, as human scientists worked to reverse the damage done by alien terraforming. Children who had grown up on distant worlds finally saw the home their ancestors had dreamed of returning to. The message that went out from Earth to every corner of human space was simple but powerful. They had come home. The children of Earth had returned not as conquerors but as liberators, not as destroyers but as healers of wounds that had festered for 35 centuries. The galaxy would never again underestimate the power of humans fighting to protect their own.